Man, I love my little boat. Sure hope nothing bad happens to it.
Hiya, Tater. I'm a creepy clown.
Your voice acting is bad.
And I spoke. Do you want it back? No, don't listen to that guy. Come over here to the real Pennywise the dancing clown.
Okay, do you have my boat?
Indeed I do, my friend. Take it.
Wait. Stop. Do not trust the clown.
Whoa, are you God?
Indeed. I am the turtle who created the universe.
What the heck is going on? Today we're talking about the entire It franchise, including the movies, the show, and the book. So let's dig into our box of items here and see what the first one we're talking about is.
Hiya, kiddies. It's me, Nickel Smart, the Jigging Jester.
That's right, I'm bringing back this character. He's the closest that I have to a costume that looks like the 1990s It. Okay? Cut me a break.
Oh, hey there.
I finally found a spot where the river wasn't super loud. So the first ever movie, or I guess in this case technically it's a miniseries released about It, was in 1990. It was a 3-part, I think, miniseries that comes out to a total of about 3 hours long, which ironically they had to make it a miniseries back then. Nowadays that'd just be like an average length movie. I mean, Stranger Things just had a 2-hour long episode. An episode of a TV show is 2 hours long. So, honestly, this isn't that absurd. But it basically follows the story of the book. Once again, we'll talk about the book later. I've actually finished the book as of recording this part, not necessarily all the other parts, because I had to film this entire thing and read that entire book in 2 weeks. Kill me now. But it pretty much on point follows the entire structure of the book. See, some of the other movies that you might be more familiar with have the first part being dedicated to the kids and then a second movie dedicated to the adults. However, the miniseries follows the book more, switching between the two perspectives. And does it work? But for what it's worth, I don't think that it's that bad in this movie. As a matter of fact, I genuinely wish that some of the later movies that we'll talk about later had this sort of transition between the adults and the kids, because it does provide a really interesting way of seeing this whole story, right? It's like we see the adults first, and then we go back to when they're kids and slowly learn why they're so terrified of this clown. It almost feels like it's all one continuous story, because the pieces sort of feed into each other. The kids realizing how they can defeat Pennywise directly coincides with the adults realizing how they can defeat Pennywise. And it kind of allows the story to flow in one continuous stream, just going between these two perspectives. Let's start with the kids. Now, the kids in this movie are actually really good. The kids all do kind of actually look pretty similar because, you know, this part of the story takes place in the 50s, and everybody looked the same in the 50s, and I think the characters don't really match their book counterparts as well, especially Beverly. I can never look at this kid and think, oh yeah, that's Beverly Marsh. It just doesn't work in my brain. But they do have good chemistry together, you know, they do have that scene of them building the dam, which is absent from other adaptations, and stuff like that, where we can see them in the Barrens just palling around and having a good time, which I think builds the chemistry of the kids. And I think the kids and their story defeating Pennywise is pretty good, and I like it. Of course, then there's the adult section. Now, I talked about how the kids are great actors. The adults are not. Don't get me wrong, they do an alright job, and some of them mess up on parts that are so entertaining that I quote them day to day. I can't tell you how many times per day I say, there's something terribly wrong in Derry. I'm sorry, terribly wrong in Derry. It's so funny to me. This is a good introduction to the It franchise, and that, aside from just chronological order, is why I put it here. I feel like this sets the gold standard. Maybe not the gold standard. The silver standard. It's enjoyable, nothing fantastic, but it does a good job. Now let's talk about Pennywise. Pennywise in this version is played by Tim Curry. pizza. We love Tim Curry. Tim Curry's great. Sure, when someone says Pennywise, I think of the Bill Skarsgård version, like I assume most of you do. But back when this first came out, I assume people thought of Tim Curry, because he does a great job playing Pennywise the Clown. I don't think he does as good being scary. I don't think there's any scenes where I was genuinely like, horrified of Tim Curry's Pennywise, but I think what it does differently is he is a clown, and I like that. In case you don't know this about me, I really like clowns. Clowns are awesome, and it is an art form that is being completely destroyed by the idea that they give out balloons at birthday parties when they're supposed to be satirical commentaries and character archetypes that make fun of modern day life while providing a whimsical side to horrible things. Sorry. Got a little too into it there. Sorry, my hair's wet. That's why I'm wearing the wig. But I think where Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise is its own character, separate from clowns or shape-shifting monsters, I think Tim Curry's Pennywise shows us why a clown could be scary.
It's unsettling. As you can imagine, the secondhand embarrassment of me being in the middle of, a random park somewhere, as far as you know, dressed like this. If you were walking down that path up there and you just saw me standing there like, you'd be scared out of your skin.
What I think is a huge difference is when he's talking to Georgie, instead of being like, what a nice boat. Do you want to come play, Georgie? Which is decently scary. He has this other way of approaching it. He's simply, oh hey Georgie, would you like a boat? Oh yeah, my name's Pennywise, what's yours? He's friendly, he's genuine, he feels like a clown. But he's in the sewer, and that's not right. His makeup's a little off, it's too deep in his eyes. His teeth look a little too realistic, the smile is a little too pointed. He's so close to being a normal clown, but there's these subtle differences that separate him and make him scary. I think he perfectly hits the uncanny valley. I think seeing a Tim Curry Pennywise just out and about is a lot more interestingly unsettling in a unique way than it is seeing something that's obviously scary, like Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise. The only problem is when Pennywise has to be genuinely scary. When they put in those really crappy, not even sharp, right? They're like that weird, just janky looking teeth. Just has to go towards the camera going like, ah! And his angry faces look funny. I think he's doing his best when he's being a silly clown that also just happens to be doing horrifying things. And I think the time it works best for him to get angry is when he's actively being defeated. Almost showing us that when he's angry, when he's genuinely scary in a way, when he's showing that surface level scare factor, that's when he's the weakest, which is mirrored in the book. The whole point of the spider monster in the book is that they realize that it's not scary. It's just a spider, and they've squashed 1 billion spiders. Why can't they squash this one too? But now that I've brought up the spider and kind of defended it, let's talk about the spider. The whole miniseries ends not with a fight against, the iconic Tim Curry Pennywise, but instead with a fight against this spider monster. Does it look good? No. All in all, I'd say the 1990 miniseries was really good. I'd say it's one of the most direct adaptations of the book. It doesn't take too many creative liberties and translates the ideas pretty well, avoiding some of those scenes. And as much as it isn't perfect, I think it's a lot better than people give it credit for. And if you haven't actually watched it, I totally recommend going to check it out.
That was a pretty good movie. I wonder, though, if there's any better ones in here. Let's take a look at 2017, see if that's any better.
That did not work as well as I was led to believe.
In 2017, the It franchise was rebooted. Now this movie came out at the perfect time for an It movie. There were all those weird clown sightings in 2016, and the whole atmosphere of horror at the time was begging for this movie. And boy, did it deliver. It 2017 shows us just how good this idea can be. Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise is horrifying. As much as I went on in the previous part about how, Tim Curry's is a better clown, Bill Skarsgård's is a better it, if you know what I mean. So let's talk about each of the things I talked about last time. The X Factor, the kids, and Pennywise himself. Now the X Factor in this movie is that it sort of feels like an 80s coming-of-age movie. See, they shifted the timeline, so now the kids section, instead of taking place in the 50s, takes place in the 80s. And since the whole first movie focuses on just the kids as opposed to switching between the kids and adults, it allows us to get acquainted with these characters in a new way and sort of gives us the single most joyful, lighthearted, and wholesome coming-of-age movies of the entire year in an evil clown movie. Which leads into the kids themselves. The kids themselves do a fantastic job. Each of these actors nails their characters so well that they've become the definitive versions of their character. I complained in the 1991 about Beverly not really feeling like the right character. This Beverly feels on point, just as every other character does. I could not have come up with better casting if I had all the resources in the world. And now to talk about Pennywise himself. Pennywise is horrifying in this. While the Tim Curry Pennywise is an interesting character that I can sort of get invested in the uneasy feeling of, Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise is just terrifying. I remember when this movie first came out. I didn't see it, obviously, I was too young, but I remember the hype around it. And I remember it being one of the first horror movies that I was actually invested in. Actually, I'd say it was the first horror movie that I actively wanted to learn more about. I was so interested in the story that trumped any feelings of terror that I had towards the movie. As much as I was still scared of it, I was fascinated by this idea, these characters, and especially this clown. Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise is the definitive version of the character, and Stephen King himself has said, it's more terrifying than I ever could have imagined, or it's something like that. I don't know. Superimpose the clip over myself or something. I think this movie is the gold standard of it movies. That's why I switched the other one to the silver standard. It takes the original book and the original movie and improves upon it in every way, while not having to address some of the other more problematic pieces that come up in the second half of the story. With that being said, what about that second part of the story? How are they going to address the whole adult storyline if this is just focused on the kids? Well, that all happens in It Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Oh wait, I did this wrong. Chapter 2. Does that look good? It says, come home for Christmas. Because like in Chapter 2, he says, come home on the... Let's get into this. It Chapter 2, released in 2019, I think. I'm just guessing, that seems about right. And people did not like it as much as they liked Chapter 1. It is considered a bad sequel, it is considered a bad movie. And to that, I would like to say... Screw you! This movie's fantastic! This movie has infamously perfect casting, some genuinely great moments, and more moments from Pennywise, and I'd argue is way scarier. And I know those are some controversial opinions, so let me break this down. Number 1, the source material. As I said before, I will cover the book at the end, because I need to finish it, and I am not that close to finishing it, and Lord help me, I have 3 days to read all of this, and formulate my thoughts on it, and make it part of the video. Yeah! But the source material for this is sometimes considered to be the weaker part of the book, and the original 1990 movie. Like, no matter how many times I adjust my hair, it always does this weird little floppy downy thing. The original 1990 miniseries, as I said before, follows the book where it's spliced up into different sections. It shows adults then kids, then adults then kids, kind of... Why am I explaining this again? But then we come to the issue, where by itself, the adult storyline doesn't really make sense. Just by itself, the whole point is they're going back to Derry and they're remembering their past, right? And if we don't go to the flashbacks as they remember their past, it really doesn't have the same impact. And that's why this movie seems like it's very poorly paced. Also, it is pretty poorly paced. Okay, pacing is an issue that, like, every single franchise I've covered on this channel struggles with. But here's what I think makes the biggest difference. The second part, where they're adults, is, insane. As previously mentioned, this entire book was basically the coke-fueled ramblings of Stephen King. I just realized I'm gonna have to censor anytime I say coke or crack or cocaine in this video, because apparently YouTube thinks drugs are like bad, but that means that the second half of the story has to address all the weird things. So where the first half can basically just be a bunch of kids defeating a clown-like entity of some sort, the second half has to address that it is a creature from space. The god of our entire universe is a turtle that vomited up the planet and all the galaxies, and that's why we all exist. The kids have the shining, but also the turtle, and it's kind of unclear what does what. A whole lot of nonsense. But here's the thing. I don't think that nonsense is bad. I think a general audience doesn't like it. So what happened is the original It was a very wide appeal, right? Pretty much anyone can sit down and watch a nostalgic 80s-based movie where a bunch of kids defeat a clown monster, right? But it takes a special kind of mentally ill, insane person to sit down and enjoy watching a bunch of kids go back to their cursed hometown to defeat an alien from another dimension with the power of a shiny turtle. Right? So, what I think ended up happening is that everybody watching the second half of It Chapter 2 was assuming it would be similar to Chapter 1. Additionally, let's talk about comparisons. It Chapter 2 was always going to be compared to It Chapter 1. But here's the thing. It Chapter 1 was released at the best time it possibly could have. There were all those 2016 clown sightings, horror was making a big comeback. It was a movie that outshone everything else at the time. And kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody had a It reboot on their bingo card for things that were going to be fantastic. But it was. And of course it introduced us to Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise, which has now become the definitive version of the character. The problem was, you can't really time something perfectly twice. Which leads to It Chapter 2, which is already the weaker side of the story, to come out at a time that's not ideal, and I think that's why people disliked it. Now let's talk about why I like it. First off, the cast. Obviously, the children's cast of the original 2017. The original cast of the 2017 movie are iconic and could never be replaced. That's Richie. That's Bill, that's Ben, that's Beverly, that's Eddie, that's Mike. That's the definitive cast. But I think that their casting in Chapter 2 is still perfect. Not only do each of the actors totally look and act like the original kid actors, but they also nail the chemistry between each other. As a matter of fact, okay, not to spoil my review of the book or anything, even more, but the adult losers in the book don't really have as much chemistry as the ones in the movies. Obviously, that's not really the point, because we don't see them on-screen acting, but the way they talk does feel a little janky. For all Stephen King's great writing techniques, casual dialogue is not one of them. But I think It Chapter 2 nails the cast. The only thing that is kind of repetitive is the whole amnesia story and the "I'm gonna leave," says Richie. "No, you're gonna stay," says Mike. "Okay," says Richie. "I'm gonna leave," says Richie after one tiny scary scene happens. Is it a realistic reaction? Yes. Is it an entertaining to watch reaction? No. But we're not just watching the movies for the kids. We're watching it for P-Dog. Oh wait, that's Welcome to Derry. Wait. For P-Dog. Okay, well no, that's the first movie. Do I have... yeah, this guy's Chapter 2. We're watching it for the big P. Wait, I was supposed to say P-Dog. We're watching it for Pennywise, okay? We're watching this movie for Pennywise. And Pennywise is so much better in this movie. The second movie does have some great scenes that tend to get overshadowed. Not only do we get right to the Pennywise shenanigans without having to, see a bunch of his other weird monster forms before then to try and, ease us into the idea, we're here for Pennywise and we get so much more of him. The cold opening with all the balloons pouring out of the bridge is fantastic. I can't think of a single genuinely bad scene with Pennywise in this entire movie. Now, throughout the duration of the movie, their run-ins with Pennywise are kind of related to their past traumas, which would have worked better if we were simultaneously seeing their past traumas as we flash back to them as kids. Whoopsie daisies. but I'd say all the scares land, and in the first movie where I genuinely walked away thinking, oh, that wasn't as scary as I thought. This movie, I still walked away thinking that wasn't as scary as I thought, but a few of the jump scares got me. Are jump scares the most sophisticated horror there is? No, but they're effective and fun. And I feel like this movie is a little bit more fun than genuine horror. Wait, maybe that's why people don't like it.
So welcome to Derry.
That's right, I'm in a clown suit.
I feel like if you've been on this channel, you know this was an inevitability. I am not going to not take the opportunity to be in a clown suit. I was gonna have a wig and makeup too, but those are elsewhere. But I felt like this was a fitting costume to review Welcome to Derry. I love this show so much. So much. As a matter of fact, this is probably going to be the part that I animate the most so that I can have an excuse to draw more stuff from Welcome to Derry.
Ha, no, you don't have any time to animate more scenes because you had to read that giant book. I'm so exhausted, but I finally finished it. Please don't click off the video before I get to tell you my thoughts on it because it nearly killed me.
Episode 1. Now, Welcome to Derry, Episode 1. I'm watching it and I'm thinking, alright, this is pretty good. You know, that opening scene with the kid Maddie, oh, that's fantastic. That is some good stuff right there. The kid spelling, and quick little thing, as he's halfway through spelling a word, he finishes the word, which then spells liars. So that's pretty cool. And then, of course, we meet the main cast. I like the cast alright. Some of them do feel like they're just, you know, redos of the originals, sort of, in a way. But that was kind of inevitable. I think one of them is literally just Stanley Uris's uncle, if I'm not mistaken. But it's fine, okay? If these are the kids that we're gonna be stuck with, that's pretty good. I do enjoy their characters a lot. So as we go throughout the episode, we get some genuinely fantastic scares, okay? Can I just say that real quick? The scares in this show are way better than either of the movies. I know I just ranted about how It Chapter 2 has better scares, but I think that's just because it was made after Chapter 1. I feel like they're getting progressively better and better with this franchise. It's fantastic. The skin lamp was fantastic, that was horrifying, and of course, the demon baby was also horrifying. I do wish they used a few more practical effects where they could, because, I mean, like, they have practical versions of most of these effects, which look better than the CGI, but I digress. That's a thing with all movies nowadays, and TV shows, I suppose, especially because of budgets. And also I noticed the lighting was a little odd, like it looked very artificial, kind of like the reason the Wicked movies all look absolutely terrible, because they're all lit so blandly, which is an odd choice. Anyways, end of the episode, the baby comes back. You know, not fantastic, but it's gonna be a fun chase scene, you know, even... They killed the kid. They killed both the kids. They killed all They killed all the kids. I know Stephen King once said, "Kill your darlings." But I don't think even he would have done that. That is awesome. The whole internet was in a craze of trying to figure out how they come back, only to realize they don't. They're dead. Whoopsie daisies. What a wonderful way to start this show. No one is safe. They're all going to die. Then, of course, the season progresses as you'd expect. I won't go fully into, like, spoiler territory because, you know, I want you to experience the show yourself. I really hope you do. And honestly, me describing the plot points, I don't enjoy doing because I feel like it's just like a worse version of what you would get from watching the show. So, like, if you wanted to get a recap of the plot, go watch the show again. It's great. But basic rundown, we meet Will's family. They moved into Derry because his father works at the military base. The military is looking into try and capturing Pennywise in like a smaller cage, and they're trying to figure that out, and there's some cool adventures with that. They send the soldiers down into the sewers at one point, and I think one of my favorite like funny-ish scares from the whole thing, not even funny-ish, I think my favorite form, one of my favorite forms Pennywise has taken is the
hand coming out, only to reveal Uncle Sam's face going, "I want you." Too bad I can't do a Pennywise voice. That was fantastic. And of course, the scares. Oh my goodness, the scares. The first scare that really made me realize that this was going to be way better than the movies was when Ronnie is under the sheets and she hears the sound, so she goes to move the sheets, and they just keep going and keep going and keep going until we realize that she's trapped in a fleshy cocoon. That's horrifying. Because as somebody who genuinely likes to hide beneath their bed sheets just every now and then to try and like darken out the room completely because there's still like lights from windows and stuff, and then sometimes because hey, I'll admit it, I get scared by stuff. I'm sorry. I'll feel the need to check outside and I'll like pull the sheets down, and the idea of one day going to pull the sheets down and I can't, genuinely horrifying. And of course the rest of the scene with her being birthed by her own bed, which turns out to be her mother, and then her mother like twists backwards. That was horrifying. And also done practically. Practical effects! Practical effects! And you know what the best is? I could tell, because practical effects look way better than CGI! This level of scare just goes all the way through. And then of course, episode 5. Episode 5, what we knew, is where we were gonna see Pennywise, the dancing clown, first appear. And I remember this episode because me and my friends, we'd been like every day after the episode released, we'd come to school, we'd talk about it, we'd like recap our theories, think, should we incorporate some of this into the fan film we're making, that sort of thing. And episode 5, we knew Pennywise was going to be in it, and we were so excited. And it did not let us down. So this is a bit of a spoiler, I won't go into them too much, but just go watch the show if you haven't, okay? I feel like this is officially a recommendation. If you can't figure out how to get it, because it took me a while, it's on HBO, but also Crave if you're in Canada. And if you think you aren't subscribed to Crave, you probably are. Try searching it up on Amazon Prime, and then it might let you play it through Crave on that, because for some reason Crave is the worst streaming service ever constructed, and we're still paying for it despite the fact that we can't cancel it, despite the fact that we can't access it unless through Prime. Long story short, if you think you don't have access to Welcome to Derry, you probably do. And even if you don't, just watch a YouTuber react to it, okay? It's not ideal, but it'll be alright. It's much better than listening to me just like say, I like this part, I like this part, I like all these parts, it's a good show. I don't know why I, as myself, was British there for a second. But the kid Maddie supposedly comes back, and as everyone assumed, it's not the real Maddie, it's Pennywise. And we get that great scene where he starts going around the little pole, slowly becoming more and more Pennywise, until the best Pennywise reveal since the sewer scene. He jumps around the pole, hits the down with the clown pose, and has these huge shining lights around him as he's in his Showtime pose, close up on Bill Skarsgård's face. They understand the star power they have in Pennywise, and I love that. Fantastic stuff. But I feel like I shouldn't just sit here and rant about how great everything is and how great that whole flashback sequence was. We're going to be talking about that when I go over the story behind Pennywise later. But I just want to say that Welcome to Derry is, I think, my favorite thing to come out of the entire It franchise. I'm sorry to say, book included. This book is fantastic, and I do think it's better than the movies, in some ways. Sort of. We'll get to that when we get to that. But I think Welcome to Derry is a sign that they really understand everything people loved and didn't love about the original movies, about the book, about this whole franchise, and they perfectly found that balance. Obviously, just from like some outsider's perspective, they might think, oh yeah, this show's good. I feel like the general consensus from non-It fans is that, yeah, the show's alright. But from the perspective of the It fandom, I suppose, I don't know, I don't really think of it as a fandom. Something's really only a fandom when like 90% of the posts are Gotcha Life and fan comics. There's one good fan comic that I could think of. But the point is,
Welcome to Derry perfectly encapsulates everything that's great about this movie franchise, and I guess now, just franchise, because it's got a show in it. And I am insanely excited for season 2 to come out in like 3 years. Please. Deltarune fan base, we need to do it again. Let's all get together. Pennywise tomorrow! It's all I finished it.
See, it's funny because the book is called It.
I don't know how well you can see me right now, and I do not care. I finished it at like 2 in the morning. It isn't that right now, it's the middle of the day, but I'm trying to set the mood here, okay? Please ignore that. This book, I have some thoughts about this book. And they'll probably be nearly impossible to share with the lights out like this, so let me just... Sorry, as cool as I think that probably might have looked, I can't be bothered to film an entire bit in the dark. I'm already combining all of my costume pieces I've had throughout the video together. I feel like that should be enough. Okay, let's talk about it. This is the source material for everything we've talked about today. The insane cocaine-fueled ramblings of Stephen King himself, writing about a killer clown from outer space, hunting a group of kids, and a group of adults, and it flips back and forth between their perspectives. It was really good. In case anyone was wondering, yes, this was absolutely fantastic. And if you're interested enough in this franchise to be watching this video, I really, really recommend you read it. But not necessarily for the reasons you might think. Now, it's difficult to think of where to start, because I can't really start at the beginning of the book, because the beginning of the book is just a bunch of super unnecessary exposition, as is so much of the rest of the book. A good chunk of these pages is just explaining the backstories for random characters that we'll not only never see again, but literally have basically no purpose. Like, right at the beginning, Stanley's wife, who in the original 1990 miniseries literally just screamed, and I think in the 2000 whatever movie, she didn't even have any lines. And it gives her an entire backstory, including trauma, character struggles, and how she faced adversity. But here's the thing. As much as that was a waste of time, beyond a waste of time, it was still good. I enjoyed reading it. Because here's something I discovered while reading this book. Stephen King is a good author. Shocker, I know. I feel like when anybody hears about this book, they hear about the intergalactic space turtle and the child scene, and they assume that the book is incoherent. And there are parts of it that are, but I'd say that for the most part, this is just a well-written book. The descriptions are nice, the language is perfect, it's everything you'd expect from Stephen King. You can't really tell until near the end how absolutely insane it is, and even then, you kinda get used to it. See, when you explain what's weird about this book out of context, it sounds insane, but within the context of the book and how it's delivered, everything makes sense. Yeah, even that scene. I'm not condoning that scene, but it makes sense, and I'm gonna explain why. So I'm gonna try my best to keep things to the same basic formula I've had for the rest of it. The kids, Pennywise, what was different, aesthetics, and then aesthetics and like what I recommended and stuff like that afterwards. As well as a little behind the scenes stuff sprinkled throughout. So first off, let's talk about the kids. Now, the kids in this book are pretty much exactly what they are in the 2017 movie. They're just on point, exactly what you would imagine. That movie, I think, honestly, the talent behind the 2017 movie could have translated this entire book flawlessly, but didn't want to because of how crazy it gets at the end. And the kids are the one thing that doesn't really have an issue with it, right? So they're basically just exactly like the 2017 kids, except more. There's more about them, they're more interesting in this because they have more time to develop. Certain things like, I think Richie has this Irish cop impression that he does of like an actual Irish cop. But as the story progresses, it comes up one or two more times until right at the climax of this one scare scene, he's being grabbed by a monster, and then in a fit of rage, he screams at the monster in the Irish cop voice, and it genuinely made me in real time go, yay! So something as simple as one of Richie's voices becomes such a crucial piece to his character and is so fantastic to read about. Of course, Beverly's father gets some more Actually, I think you guys have got that part. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's a lot more in-depth and a lot more detailed. And of course, there's Patrick Hockstetter. I think Patrick is the perfect example of what this book does with the characters from the movies that we know. It takes a character that in the movies is just simply another bully character who seems to not be afraid of anything or care about anyone else, and gives him such an intricate backstory that is 100% not necessary and no one was asking for, but it is so good that I am beyond happy that it's in here. It tells us the story about how he has undiagnosed sociopathia and literally does not believe anyone else to be real except for him. Now, I don't know if he interviewed somebody with the actual condition to figure out how to do this or anything, but from what I read, that seems like a really, really accurate descriptor and reflection of the condition. And if it's not, then at least it's a well-written character trait. We see how Patrick really sees himself as the only real person and everyone else is just set pieces to his Broadway show of a life, and how the only reason that he acts normal is because he considers those to be rules, and rules are meant to be followed, and his only problem is not wanting to break the rules. I think he's the perfect example about how in this book, someone who could have just been another bully character ended up getting a whole backstory about having an undiagnosed medical condition that led him to taking his own younger baby brother's life, not kidding, when he was a child, and the only person who ever figured it out being his father, who was so scared of him that he never brought it up around him. The scene where his father sees the snowy footprints leading away from the cradle, puts two and two together, and says nothing is gold. I might make another video just breaking down this book, because it is so, so good. But those are the characters. Now we gotta talk about Pennywise. Now, Pennywise is a lot more inconsistent in this book, which I kind of love. His first descriptor, with of course the iconic scene with Georgie, is that almost of a genuine circus clown. Even more so, I'd say, than the 90s version. He's got this electric blue, I think it's described as a tie. I imagined like a necktie, but in other people's renditions, I've seen it like being a bow of some kind. And he was in a much more lively suit and introduced himself not as Pennywise, but as Bob Gray. I play Pennywise the Clown, seeming like a genuine person. He didn't give off that eerie sensation. He was just a normal person. It's the environment that was eerie, which I feel like is something that the 2017 movie didn't quite nail. Pennywise isn't supposed to be scary in that scene. It's the fact that Pennywise is in the sewer, luring a kid towards him. That's the scary part. I feel like that's what a lot of this book does right with Pennywise. Pennywise isn't the scary part. It's what he's doing, where he is, the context of him. The forms Pennywise takes are a lot goofier in this one. It's not like some abstract painting that the child was scared of, appearing behind them with rows of hay needly-like teeth. I don't know why I said hay-like teeth. It makes sense in my mind. Instead, he's just like, I'm a vampire, blah, blah, blah. I'm a werewolf, blah, blah, blah. But it's effective because of how Stephen King writes it. He's able to write the fear and the context of these scares so well that you feel like you're one of the kids and you feel like it's happening to you. Because he's so perfectly able to describe the visceral emotions and the exact train of thought that these kids go through when they see these scary things, that it makes them feel genuinely scary. That way, something as simple as, it's a guy that's stinky and smelly and covered in the grossies, becomes genuinely horrifying and feels real. However, let's talk about the content. I've described why Stephen King is such a great author. Now I'm gonna tell you why he's kind of a really bad storyteller. Now I know it sounds kind of insane to say that Stephen King isn't good at building the idea or concept of a story. Like, he made The Shining, and that was a great concept. As long as you ignore the fact that in the Stephen King version of The Shining, he tries to kill his family with a croquet mallet. And also, there's moving hedges and an evil garden hose. None of that is good, and honestly, it makes it sound like a bad Goosebumps book. But when you read it, you're able to understand it in a different way. What Stephen King does so well is he takes outrageous concepts and he makes them feel real, tangible, and interesting. That being said, let's talk about some of the outrageous concepts in this book. The ending. The ending so infamously terrible that the movies themselves had to address it over and over and over again. Stephen King himself addressed it in the movie as a cameo. And yet, it makes sense. Hear me out on this. Now, for those of you who don't know what the ending of the book is, I'll just quickly recap it for you. Instead of, just insulting Pennywise and being like, oh, we have to belittle him, not be afraid of him anymore, and then they rip out his heart or whatever they do in all the other versions, in this version, they contact the ancient deity, the turtle, who created the entire universe because he vomited it up. That was E apostrophe, by the way. I'm not assuming the gender of the turtle. I'm sorry, guys. And then they have to contact that turtle to get advice on how to complete the ritual of Chud, or Chud, or Chud. On how to complete the ritual of Chud, which involves biting its tongue when it bites your tongue. But they realize that they don't have to literally bite its tongue, they have to bite its metaphorical tongue, because the actual entity, it exists in a universe beyond the main universe known as the Macroverse that's addressed in other Stephen King books, and it's like this energy ball thing, and the it we see is kind of it, but not really. They're two separate things, but they're the same thing, but they're in different places, and they're different entities sort of, but they're the same entity. And the one on Earth is trying to grab a Bill and just chuck him across all of space, I guess, till he hits a wall and splats. So what Bill has to do is he has to bite the tongue of the unknowable light deity version of it. Metaphorically, but also in real life. Also, the turtle's toenails are galaxies. But it makes sense. Because in the context of the book, the way it's written, it simply makes sense. I like that addition, and I'm kinda sad it isn't in any of the movies. Also, the turtle has some great lines. I'm the one who created the universe. But don't blame me for it, I had a stomachache. Honestly, it has more of a moral, in a sense. I reflected on the beautiful chaos that is life when reading this segment. Not a lot, but a little bit. It's such a creative and strange idea that's taken to its extreme, and I find that way more entertaining than something playing it safe and just, what? You're dumb. You're stupid. Haha. Look, he's dead. No. Talk to that ancient turtle god that vomited the universe. Bite its tongue. Go to the Macroverse. Almost get flung into a wall before somebody else astral projects into your vision of the turtle and grabs your arm and then pulls you back. That's what I want to see. As much as the ending of this book from a storytelling perspective sucks, it's entertaining. And it makes me actively think, that was a good book.
Hello everybody, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. I think this is the longest video I have ever posted, and I can definitely feel it while working on it. I took Christmas off, which is why it's a bit late, but also mostly because I just had so much extra stuff to do. So I hope you enjoyed it. I know there wasn't as much animation as usual, but I prioritized getting it finished and put together and adding the animations afterwards, and I think they were a lot higher quality. I spent like a whole day on this thumbnail alone. I hope that shows. So thank you so much for watching all the way through, and if you want to see me improve in the future, please subscribe. You can always do that. And if you have stuff you want to tell me to do, just let me know in the comments. I think that's all. Oh, and you can like if you want to. That'd be really nice. But honestly, you just watching to the end is pretty much the best form of engagement that YouTube could possibly have. They really care about watch time now. So thank you so much for watching to the end. And remember, Rouse is Flowey. Pennywise is awesome. I didn't plan this part of the thing out. Okay. Until next time, remember, Rouse is Flowey, God is a turtle, and this has been Tater Animations trying to do a YouTube video.